How you doing, guys? Big Mate Dan School here again today, back once again with another episode of my Conquest series for you. Today we'll be taking a look through the pages of issue 37. So, issue 37, what's inside it? Well, what do we get with it at first? Firstly, we get the Rise of Pattern Ruins with it. I can't show you them because I've already taken them off the sprue and built them. They're that easy to build. I just chucked them right together without even looking at the instructions provided. And I've built a couple of sets before, so I really like this terrain. For me, it holds a lot of value. The price of the issue is $7.99. The price of 2 lots of Rise of Pattern Ruins, which we've gotten over 2 issues, is £17.50 for 2 lots of Rise of Pattern Ruins. That is to say, a single set of Rise of Pattern Ruins, which is spread over 2 issues of this. So 2 issues of this, roughly 16 quid. So you're saving about £1.50. There's a big chance you can get them for cheaper from a third-party retailer. But for me, when you look at the quantity of plastic in there, compare it to like a £22.50 Primarius Apothecary or something like that, then you're getting so much more plastic for your money. So, you know, it depends how you value it to yourself individually. But personally, I love terrain on the battlefield. I love line of sight blocking terrain. It just makes the battlefield slightly more challenging for both you and your opponent. It gives you somewhere to hide. It restricts movement of certain units, like bigger units, like vehicles and stuff. So for me, terrain adds so much more depth to your battle. This issue has great value beyond the actual monetary value. As I've said previously on previous videos where there's been terrain inside it, you should know that by now really, but I always like to cover it. Anyway, let's check out what's inside. I've had a long day at work, and I've not even been able to read this at work, so I've had to read it when I got home. I'm hoping it doesn't delay the video too much, but yes, my head was a bit fried as well, so I just had to have a lie down when I got home as well. Anyway, onto the issue. What do we get on the front cover? It says, Chronicles of Ultramar, recess shade your Ultramarines and Warlords in your games. Flicking over to the next page, it's got something that's not covered on the front cover. Sorcerers. So it covers Sorcerers on these first 2 pages. We have this page here, it's Death Guard Sorcerers. The Ultramarines don't have Sorcerers, they have Psychers. So that's a thing to remember. Loyalist chapters have Psychers, Librarians in the case of Space Marines, and the Traitor Legions have Sorcerers. They're basically the same thing though. They just use psychic powers, but it's they know the power comes from the warp and from chaos and stuff, where Librarians are kind of like in denial. You know, it actually comes from the warp, same as the Sorceress powers, but they're sort of in denial about that. Anyway, that's my thoughts again on the complexities of 40k. So it talks on these 2 pages about Sorcerers in the Death Guard Legions and how they are not very well thought of by the Death Guard commanders, the Death Guard characters like Mortarion. Typhus, I think, is a bit more in favour of Psychers and Mortarion. I'm not entirely sure, actually, to be honest. That's just a feeling I get for some reason. I think it's because Typhus was a Psyker even during the Horus Heresy. So he already had powers manifest themselves pre-Heresy. And Mortarion only manifested his powers when he gained demonhood. So he's a demon primal, Mortarion. Gained demonhood, the powers kind of came with that. But the Death Guard as a whole sort of distrusts Psychers massively. There's only one, I think it's the 4th Plague Company, which are led by a demon of Nurgle. They employ Psychers in the command structure of the Legion, where all the other Plague Companies they shun the Psychers. They sort of push them to the side. They see them as like a necessary evil, but they don't treat them with any respect or reverence like you might expect a loyalist Space Marine chapter to treat their Librarians. So yeah, it's more like the way the Orcs treat Weird Boys, which is the Orcs will use Weird Boys, but they think they're just a bit just a bit odd. A weird boy is an orc psyker, just in case you don't know. And their powers manifest in all sorts of crazy ways. So they kind of the rest of the boys don't trust them because the head could explode at any time, or they could vomit out this like warp lightning or something like that and kill them. So orcs kind of stand back from weird boys when they walk onto the battlefield, and Death Guard treat the sorcerers in very much the same way. Anyway, on to the next page. A lovely bit of artwork here. I'll bring the mag a bit closer so you can try and make it out. This is from the cover of one of the Horus Heresy books. If I remember rightly, it's not Unremembered Empire, it's Fear to Tread, if I remember rightly. So this artwork was on the cover of one of the first Horus Heresy, not one of the first Horus Heresy books, sorry, one of the Horus Heresy books, the first one that focused on the Ultramarines Legion. And that is Rabute Guilliman during the Heresy. And he is out in space without a helmet on. Primarchs are such a massive masterpiece of genetic manipulation that a Primarch can survive for a good little while in space without being completely sealed in a spacesuit of some sort. A set of power armor as well can survive in the void. So the occupant of a set of power armor, that is to say, can survive in the void. And the bulbous things on the backpack, they're actually listed in some of the early artwork as manoeuvring thrusters. So it's designed to move through space and help you move through space, where now they're more described as vents, but in the early artwork and the concept art of the Rogue Trader concept art, they were described as manoeuvring thrusters. So that's something that's been retconned more recently to just say they're ventilation for the power pack, the enormous amounts of heat that will be generated by this nuclear reactor that's strapped to the back of the Space Marine. Anyway, I'm going off on tangents here. I think it's because my head's kind of all over the place from a weird day at work. I'll try and keep it to the magazine now. So the Chronicles of Ultramar are covered here. Destined to lead, the Emperor finds Rabute Guilliman, and he's already set up this empire in the Ultima Segmentum. And he's like, well, yeah, you can lead the Ultramarines now because they're taken from your gene seed. And then victories beyond count, the Ultramarines go on to conquer more worlds in the Great Crusade for the Imperium than any other legion. And those worlds kind of get set up by they get left in the best stead when you compare it to other conquered worlds during the Great Crusade by other legions. You know, they're kind of like really well set up, so it's hard for them to fail. Set up by the Ultramarines, so it's hard for them to fail because Rabute Guilliman's that pragmatic, and he's got certain ways of doing things that it really makes it hard for them to fail and hard for them to turn from I was going to say from the light of the Emperor, but at that time it was the imperial truth they like to promote. And then there's the raising of Monarchia, which is a seminal moment in the prior to the Horus Heresy, when Monarchia was this capital city on a planet that the Wordbearers Legion had conquered during the Great Crusade, and they set up this huge city as a tribute to the Emperor, because the Wordbearers worshipped the Emperor as a god, as all of the Imperium in the 41st millennium does, or most of the Imperium in the 41st millennium. The Space Marines don't, but most people during the Horus Heresy didn't think of him as a god, but the Space Marine Legion definitely didn't, apart from the Wordbearers, and they saw him as this divine being. So they built this city as a tribute, but the Emperor didn't want to be seen as a god. He wanted everybody to believe in the imperial truth, which is kind of like science over religion. Before the Great Crusade, he united Earth under his rule, and part of that was destroying all relics of religion. And there's a really good short story in one of the Horus Heresy short story books called The Last Church. So if you search that out, I'm sure you'll be able to find it and read it for yourself. But it's a really cool short story, that. But anyway, back to the issue at hand. The issue at hand, issue 37. So yeah, well, I completely went off on a tangent again. So bringing it back to Monarchia, the Word Bearers built this as a tribute to what they saw as the God Emperor of mankind, and then because the Emperor didn't want to be seen as a god, he ordered the Ultramarines to go there, destroy Monarchia, and then hold the Word Bearers to account with Malcador, who was the Emperor's right-hand man. The Word Bearers all were forced to see the destruction of Monarchia, basically, and bow to the Emperor, or to I've just said his name and I've forgotten it already. Malcador, bow to Malcador, sort of bend the knee kind of thing, you know, to show fealty where they had kind of gone astray from what the Emperor wanted for them. And ever since then, the Word Bearers held that in their mind and hated the Ultramarines ever since then. There was a bit of animosity before then, I believe, but I don't know too much about the animosity prior to that. And this battle here, you see, is a result of that. Basically, it's the ultimate culmination of that hatred the Word Bearers the hatred the Word Bearers hold in their heart for Ultramarines. They betrayed the Ultramarines at Macragge, it's not Macragge, it's Calth, which is a world in the Macragge system, I think, Calth. There was a muster of the Word Bearers and the Ultramarines forces and some World Eaters as well, I think, that was planned by the War Master Horus before he was openly treacherous against the Imperium. And basically the Word Bearers ambushed the Ultramarines. They let them believe they were friends, and they were mustering to go off to fight this new deadly enemy that had appeared in the galaxy that they didn't really know much about, but they were just following orders from the War Master. So they all mustered almost the entirety of the Ultramarines fleet, the Word Bearers fleet, and they wrought utter devastation on the Ultramarines. When Guilliman found out, I think he got blasted into space, and he had no helmet on or anything like that. And then he just goes on a rampage, hunting down these Word Bearers that are, that he's realised at this point are traitors. He tried to talk to his brother Lorgar, the Primarch of the Word Bearers Legion. He tried to talk to him and give him a second chance. And at first they didn't realise it was an attack from the Word Bearers. They thought it was from an outside force, but then eventually the cogs start turning and everything falls into place, and he's like, oh, it is actually a treacherous attack. But yeah, that's basically. I'm not going to talk about this page now because I spent so long talking about just that one little snippet of the story there. But that's just gives you an idea of the hatred between the Word Bearers and the Ultramarines. On to the how to build section, the Rise of Pattern Ruins. Like I said, I built it without looking at the instructions because I'm so clever. To be fair, it's pretty simple. There's some slots in the bottom bit, slots in the top bits, you slot them together. Cleaned off all the mould lines and everything. And then it gives you a how to paint section here. Now, they've done the how to paint section for these already. However, they have added a little bit of extra fine detail here. So it goes over the same stages, painting the walls black, the pipes gold, other metalwork silver, Agrax shade and null oil in the recesses, wire in red, and then it gives you a little bit of extra fine detail here with the things like the control panels on the walls and servo skulls and stuff like that, or lights rather, not servo skulls. And then it's another bit of fine detail work on the Space Marines. So it's interesting how they've spread this out. They just keep going back every now and again when they have less content for a certain issue, because we've already had a set of these Rise of Pattern ribbons, so they don't have to go through them in as much detail. When they have less content for the issue, they throw in more painting guides for models we've previously had. And it's not that we've been waiting for ages for the paints either, because all the paints in here are paints that we've had for a little while now. Even going back to Lieutenant Calcius, I seem to remember seeing a little picture of his shoulder somewhere. Here we go, yeah, so a Lieutenant Calcius here. They go in, oh, what it is here actually, we have been waiting for this paint. So the laurel wreath on his shoulder pad, which we painted with Death Guard green, now gets a wash of Athonian camo shade, which we only got last week. So to be fair, they are using some of the newer paints that we've barely used thus far. Same this week as last week for the Death Guard. We've got a recess shading tutorial, so get your Aggressor shade or your Null Noil, whichever colour is more appropriate for the colour you're painting over. It tells you all this in here. And just go around the little line areas on the power armour and the areas where there's an angle in the power armour, and do your recess shading. And it really makes the miniatures pop, makes them look a little bit better than they did before. And they've gone from, I'd say, very basic tabletop standard to a tabletop standard now. So they're going to look really good from that, 2-3 feet distance that I talk about from time to time. And that's your painting guide. It's around 8 pages. Yeah, it looks like 8 pages there, your painting guide. And it's onto the play section. Now, this month, we've got some Warlords. So it's introducing Warlords to the game, the idea of Warlords. You may remember from a previous video, I don't know if it was last week's or the weeks before, where I mentioned they were introducing new victory conditions like the first blood rule, where the first side to kill a unit gets a victory point. Now in this one, with Warlords, they also introduce slay the Warlord sort of rule. So you get 2 victory points if you kill the enemy Warlord. So to just briefly talk you through it, they explain Warlords and they say each side picks a Warlord. If that Warlord's a character, they benefit from a Warlord trait, and then we turn the page and take a look at the 3 possible Warlord traits they're giving us for the time being. Now there's some useful ones and there's some not so useful ones. I'll explain why. I'll just read through them. So we've got Legendary Fighter first. This Warlord, if this Warlord charges in the charge phase, add 1 to their attacks characteristic until the end of the fight phase. So that's pretty useful for most Warlords, but it's not useful if you're not planning on charging with your Warlord really. So if it's the kind of Warlord you want to hang back, then it's not going to be that useful for them. Say a Tower Ethereal or something that's not that great in combat. Inspiring Leader is the next one. Friendly units within 6 inches of this Warlord can add 1 to their leadership characteristic, so it gives units around you a slight boost of leadership, so when they have to take morale tests, they are less likely to lose any more models from that unit. And then finally, this is one that's not that useful for one side at least. Tenacious Survivor. Roll each time this Warlord loses a wound. On a 6, the Warlord avoids damage and doesn't lose the wound. Now that's not useful for the Death Guard, for the reason that they already have Disgustingly Resilient, which is a 5-up save that has a similar effect basically. So each time you lose a wound with a Death Guard model, you roll a dice. On a 5 or 6, that wound is not lost. So you wouldn't then get another roll for having this Warlord trait. That's my understanding of it anyway. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, please. But I believe you wouldn't get to roll again and see if you can roll a 6. So if you roll a 1, 2, 3 or 4, when you roll for Disgustingly Resilient, you'll fail that, and then you wouldn't get to try and roll a 6 again. So that's not that useful for the Death Guard player. And similar to the psychic powers they talked us through the other week, it says you can roll for your traits if you want, or you can choose your traits. It's really up to you. And then we've also got a Sky Shield landing pad piece of terrain in this, which is surprisingly really, I think it's a really little cool way to add this bit of terrain in here. It's just a 2D bit of terrain like the board we've got, and it's half of a Sky Shield landing pad. And all you do, you just slot it into a certain part of the battlefield. It shows you on this page where to put it. So here's the battlefield, the battle map we've got and we're currently using, and then you just put it in this bottom corner here, and it lines up really well. I've tried it myself. It lines up really well in that little bottom corner, and it gives us a new objective to get to, for this week's battle. So this week's battle, you may remember from the previous battle, the objective was to evacuate the Gene Seed. Now this is a continuation this week. They've managed to find a landing pad that the Death Guard haven't overrun, and the Space Marines have to move from this deployment zone down here to get the Gene Seed out of there, and the Death Guard have to try and stop them, basically. And I'll just talk you through the victory conditions, because I think everything I said there pretty much explained the setup for the battle. So the victory conditions: the player with the most models on the landing pad at the end of the game scores 3 victory points. The first player to eliminate an enemy unit gains 1 victory point. That's your first blood rule. Both players score 2 victory points if they manage to eliminate the enemy warlord. So there's a slight disadvantage for the Death Guard here, though, I'd say, because the Death Guard only have 4 units. The Space Marines have 5 units. However, they do have a durable unit in the Rhino, the Death Guard. So, you know, all the Death Guard units are quite durable because they've got 3 up power armor save, and then they've got the 5 up disgustingly resilient. Or in the case of the Tainted Cohort, they've got a 2 up save for their armor, I think. And then I think they'll have a 5 up invulnerable save because it's Terminator armor, basically. 5 up invulnerable save that helps them there. So it's a nice little issue again. As usual, as I always seem to conclude, it's a nice little issue. On to next week's issue. We're getting a new playmat next week, don't forget that. Well, hey, we've got a slightly different view of it this week. Looking at it, it looks like all this grey here is really similar to the grey on the playmat that we've already got. This playmat here. So this sort of area here, oh not this, sorry, it's not this sort of area. Unfortunately, you can barely see any of it. It's just here. It's like a really similar grey colour, like a mottled grey colour here. So I think they'll line up to next to each other quite nicely, provided the roads and everything line up. But it will look a bit odd, like I said, because they've got different pavements. They've got metallic pavements on this one, and on the one we've already got, it's got like a stonework pavement. But I think they'll line up well enough that you've got a nice big surface area to play on. And the following week after that, we're getting a Space Marine captain, so it's another character for the Space Marine side. Primaris captain, he's got a big power sword there and a bolter, probably a stalker pattern bolt rifle or something along those lines. We're getting Rotigus Rainfather lore as well, a detailed guide, so it's more guides on painting detailed miniatures. It's probably a detailed painting guide on this miniature in particular. And exciting new missions, of course. Oh, and don't forget, next week we're getting the Tallyman as well. No, it's not the Tallyman, it's the Plague Surgeon. So that's your Death Guard equivalent of an apothecary. So I wonder if in the narrative that we're following in these missions, because we're getting the Death Guard equivalent of an apothecary there, if he's managed to gather some corrupted gene seed. We'll have to wait and see next week, won't we? Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the battlefield.